Welcome to the Long-Term Investor. Today, I wanted to tackle a question that I often cover here on the show. It's a part of something where I'll say, like, do you have a financial advisor? Because I'm a strong believer, and I'm biased, that having a professional will help improve your outcomes. But I think the actual question that is more important is, do I have a high-quality advisor? Because I think what separates a truly great advisor from an average one is really important. And so I've invited a good friend of mine, colleague at Plancorp, Ranie Verby, who is a CPA, a CFP, and leads our advisor team in practice management at Plancorp. And what she's going to do today is help us understand what makes a great advisor, why that difference matters for your future, and how you can tell what kind of advisor you're working with. So Ranie, thanks so much for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic specifically. It's what I love is to grow and develop advisors and make them the best they can be for our clients. So I'm really thrilled to talk about this.
You're one of the key players at Plancorp that works behind the scenes to make sure that we have a great experience. And so we're really proud of our advisor team. I mean, we often talked about how we are a destination for the nation's advisors, but maybe we just start at defining what it means to be a high quality advisor in the first place.
That's a great question because there are so many people who call themselves financial advisors, right? If you're on the golf course, it is likely that somebody introduced themselves today as a financial advisor, but that can mean a whole lot of different things, right? It can mean an insurance salesman. It can mean a broker-dealer. What you want it to mean is somebody like us who works for a registered investment advisor. And I think it's pretty simple to spot the ones that you want. They're transparent about how they work with their clients. They're transparent about how they get paid. They're really clear up front that they have a fiduciary responsibility to you, and they're going to talk about that because if they're upholding that standard, it's a big deal. At Plancorp, we have the CFEX certification, the Center for Excellence in Financial something that I'll say.
Center for Fiduciary Excellence.
Fiduciary Excellence. There you go. So we have the CFEX certification at Plancorp, the Center for Fiduciary Excellence, which is a very good sign in a firm. It takes a lot of due diligence and compliance work to get there. So ideally, like I said, they work in an RIA firm and only their clients pay them. Otherwise, you're looking at a broker, you're looking at an insurance salesman, and in that case, there's going to be commissions and incentives.
Those are great kind of starting points. And because you work with so many of our advisors, both through coaching and management and implementing new processes that people use to help better serve their clients, I'm kind of curious if you have, and putting you a little on the spot, any client stories where you could really tell, okay, the work is paying off. Like I can see that this individual is really striving for excellence and doing great things.
Yeah, there are just so many, honestly, to pick from. And it's really fun for me always to see our advisors in the wild with clients. I don't always get to observe their client meetings, but when I do, it's incredibly fun. And I think what you see is truly just the bond, right, between a client and the advisor and a level of trust that you can't even imagine anywhere else. I mean, I remember being in a room with one of our single guys who has been an advisor for 15 plus years. It's really fantastic, but working with this particular widow, and she took me through some of the stories of how they've worked together throughout the death of her husband, the following months when she wasn't really ready to make decisions yet, and how he had guided her through that process. And the bond was just so clear and strong. They'd been working together for over a decade. We have so many examples of that similar story where they've just really grown together over time through those hard decisions.
You know, I usually only come into meetings when it's somebody who visits Plancorp for the first time because they found us through the show, through the podcast, through the writing, or when there's like an investment specific question. But it's interesting you mentioned that because I feel like when I'm watching a new introduction to Plancorp, working with our advisors are just asking such good questions. And a lot of times when I'm having the introductory call with a prospectively new client, they'll say, well, how does this work? And I'm like, I honestly can't predict what they're going to ask you. I'm just always blown away in general. And I think that's really, again, something you've done a lot of work on. And I promise I will dig in on at some point. But it's a lot of why we say, yeah, we're the destination for the country's best advisors. To you, what does that phrase mean to you in general?
Yeah, honestly, when I think about why we're really that magnet for advisors, it's because we've built a practice where we can equip everyone to bring their best strengths to the table and really work there. So our advisors are focused on their clients. And they're able to take vacation. They don't look like they haven't slept in 3 weeks. They look like, we take good notes, we take good care of our clients. Our clients know where we are and that they have a full team of people to serve them. And we're able to handle the payroll, the compliance, the back office, all of those things with folks who are really good at running businesses.
Obviously, we're really proud of our people. You and I both do a lot of recruitment work. Like when we see a great advisor, we're like, hey, A players deserve to be on an A team. Like, let's do this together. But I wouldn't say that everything is perfectly natural. I mean, I don't want to take away from the contribution that you work so hard on, which is really building up people. And I think what's particularly interesting about your contribution in this age, and something that our viewers on Cheddar or YouTube or our listeners on the podcast will find interesting, is how you've really blended behavioral finance with AI. So I guess talk to me about that. I'm actually not going to give you a specific question. I'm going to let you jump off and go anywhere you want with that, because I know you're pretty passionate about the topic in general.
Yeah, I might surprise you. So you mentioned that I'm a CPA. So I started my career in public accounting and really loved that format, but it's a lot of hard work. And there were a lot of employee benefits that they have to retain the employees, but you don't exactly feel seen and heard, right? You're there to serve the client. You're there to perform a task or do a job, especially in the beginning. And as you grow up in those levels, you get a little closer to the client, you get a little closer to the client work. So when I came to an RIA and became a financial planner, what was really important to me was that interface and being the person who's hearing the clients and hearing what they need, seeing them, caring for them, paying attention to them, right? And then when I moved into a more management-focused role, I realized that, once again, I was sort of back in those accounting days where not a lot of people were paying attention to the advisors, and the advisors weren't necessarily feeling seen and heard and cared for. And so, you start to realize that therapists go to therapy and doctors see a doctor. My chiropractor sees a chiropractor, right? So helpers need to get help. And I'm not just saying that our financial advisors need financial advice. They do, and we do a very good job of providing that for one another as well. They also just need help. They need rest. They need focus. They need education and development that they don't have to go seek on their own necessarily. They need a lot poured into them as just human beings. And so I feel like it's my responsibility and that of my team to really see and hear and care for those advisors so that they are their best self to see and hear and care for their clients.
And I know firsthand, a lot of this has shades of the steps you've taken on implementing a behavioral finance program and training at Plancorp.
That's right.
I would love to hear some more about that, but I want to set the stage for listeners where in our field, people have talked about behavioral finance for a long, long time, but a lot of it was in the context of look at those silly little humans making their silly little human mistakes and not a lot of practical application for it. And so I'm really proud of the dedication that the advisors have to the program, but maybe you can give people a little sense of what the training looks like, what some of the objectives are, and what some of the outcomes that if you haven't had Plancorp as your advisor before, you might experience.
Yeah, I think one of the things we do really, really well is bring that human aspect in. And we're careful. You hear a lot of people say, well, that's irrational behavior. It's not irrational. It's perfectly rational and normal because it's how our brains work. What's irrational is asking somebody to rebalance in a down market when they're really, really stressed out about it, right? That's what's rational to them is exit and get away from the fear, right? The irrational is what we bring to the table and the ability to take the emotion out of the game and follow the logic, right? And one of the things I meant to mention above, when we talked about what makes a high quality advisor, they're not just looking at your investments, they're looking at your tax planning. And really importantly, they're looking at your estate planning. And I'm very passionate to say not just your estate and what happens to your assets after you're gone, but what happens in the last years of your life. When you've retired, you start to need medical care, your family is going to step in. What does this look like in terms of your powers of attorney and those legal documents that you need to have? But we also want to be that conduit for sharing how you wanted things to go, both before and after your passing. And so I think one of the things that behavioral finance equips us for as advisors is to really dig into those tough conversations that are awkward and morbid at times, but we really have to do it. And it's maybe not a surprise to people that our industry is trending younger, right? For so long, this has been the 65-year-old single practitioner. I'm put out my shingle and I serve my 100 clients. More and more, we're a younger practice. So you see advisors who have not gone through these challenges themselves in their own life experience. So where we bring in behavioral finance training really is important to give them reps to help them absorb the stories of other people in the firm. We are really cross-pollinating each other. We're working with our more tenured advisors, our second career consultants. We're helping share stories, and we're helping people not shy away from those really hard conversations. They're not hard technically, they're hard emotionally. And we want folks to be comfortable in those situations.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I imagine listeners, I have a lot of do-it-yourself listeners, and look, not everybody's going to hire an advisor over their lifetime. I think even all do-it-yourself investors recognize that a professional will help, but they want to save money. And I'm not here to debate that at the moment. But the thing that I think that gets missed a lot of times is, okay, well, we don't live in a spreadsheet. And so how do you go about making those decisions? And then when a big life event happens, who do you trust? Because there's a lot of incentives around, and it's really nice to have somebody who can take care of things. The story I always tell is that, look, I hired someone to mow my lawn when my first kid was born in 2013, and I was paying someone $35 a week. I've slowly gone up the pay scale. There's no chance in the world I'll tell people how much I'm paying per week. It's so embarrassing. But a tree fell on our fence and they just fixed it. And I didn't even know they did that.
That's right.
And that's like, I sort of realized I'm paying for owned outcomes. I'm paying for responsiveness. They know me when I email. I love that I can email my lawn people. I'm not just texting some dude or even some group of people. But I think what I'm getting at here is that I think a lot of times when people think about hiring a financial advisor, naturally they think of hiring someone who knows all of the tax rules and all of the investment due diligence. But in reality, we invest so much time in the human piece of the relationship that you are never going to be able to quantify on your own. And I also think that advisors that join us who've been working in other places just find it to be such a breath of fresh air. I'm going to pivot a little unless you have anything else to say on that topic.
No, I would add into that for DIYers just that I think it's really important in all of our lives to acknowledge that we can't be all things to all people. We cannot be the expert at everything. So you might be really good at investments. That's fantastic. Peter's really good at investments. He's not really good at tax.
Thanks.
I'm really good at tax, right? I'm not very good at investments. So I think we know as a firm where we specialize and where we spend our best time. And you as a DIYer are phenomenal with investments. But do you know every estate planning nuance that you need to know to avoid a potential tax situation or to avert a family crisis that could happen? Because maybe you accidentally thought that, or maybe intentionally thought that this medical power of attorney and this financial power of attorney would get along and make decisions together. You can't be the best at knowing all of those things. And so where an advisor comes in, I think, is really to help build speed and education in decision-making so you can feel empowered to take that next step. You don't have to really go spend the time doing all the research to know what you don't know and track that down. So it really, just like outsourcing your lawn, I don't want to be the best at mowing my lawn. I just want it to be done and pretty and look great. And to your point, I want the owned outcome. I want that accountability, and you get what you pay for. So if you are really looking for the cheapest solution, they're not investing in their talent. And I know we'll talk more about that later, but the firm has to be investing in their advisors if you want those owned outcomes on the other end of the table.
I could not agree more. And on the complete opposite end of this behavioral finance spectrum, this very human touch part of advice that we focus so much on, is that we have, maybe to nobody's surprise, been aggressive adopters of AI. And there's a lot of talk, I think, in our industry. And again, I think more of our listeners are individuals than advisors, although we have a not insignificant amount of advisors who listen to the podcast. So advisors know all people talk about is adopting AI. So we're kind of giving listeners a sense of what our advisors are doing differently, the investment we are making in their human skills. But I will tell you that I have new clients come and say, well, how are you guys using AI? So maybe you can enlighten us all on how the advisor's day has looked so much better and frees them up to work more with our clients.
I would love to. And there are so many advisors we talk to out in the field that just, how do you spend your day is a question that really baffles people. It's like, I don't know. I react to emails. That's a terrible answer, right? And so we've consistently tried to build those processes so there is a structured way and a way to spend your day that makes sense and you can be proactive for your clients. But what we realized, having advisors manually scrape calendars and files and take notes in a meeting, recap those meetings, even just recapping those meetings, what, you might call the history notes to document in the file, that's like a late night tax that they're having to pay, and it wasn't that long ago that people were handwriting those notes, right? So I think those types of things where it's the note taking, but it's the making sure that the scheduler link has gone out 3 weeks in advance and the following up some of those components that can really easily be automated. And then now that we have better AI, what we can do to go back through prior meeting notes and really synthesize a great agenda for the next meeting, it's saving us hours and hours of advisor time, and it's allowing them to think at a higher level, right? When we all know that when we're lost in the details, you cannot see the forest for the trees. Let's put AI in the trees, right? And let's step back and see the forest even at that newer planner level. And so we're able to train people on the things that matter more, which is spending more time with the clients, better, clearer questions, more energy just left for their clients, and to make those observations in a meeting room where, I start to realize when I'm just watching the advisor, it's like, oh, you really enjoy talking about taxes and this client really dislikes it. So they have disengaged mentally, but you're still pointing at the board and looking at the Roth conversions that could be done 5 years from now. I think having those human observations built into our planners at an earlier stage is going to help them build more meaningful careers, really, with that human connection at the front of it. So AI is going to take some of our block and tackle work. It really is. It's going to help us get better, and it's our job to reskill and get better with our clients.
I have a few advisor friends who are going to love that you used block and tackle as the description there. Just for the record, that caused a little bit of riff on LinkedIn among some corners, so that they're just going to really appreciate it, especially because you don't like sports at all.
I don't
so
like
I'm just
sports. And I rue the advisor who uses only sports analogies, because once you say more than block and tackle, you've lost me, and I don't know where you're going, and we need a new metaphor.
Not to terribly sidetrack us, but sports is a really good investment parallel, as is gambling. But I know those are both unpopular, and I lean so hard into food now. I've realized everybody eats, and there's a lot of quality links there. So it's interesting as we evolve. Fortunately, I should ask AI to get me some more examples. But in general, I digress. You use block and tackling. I know I'm having people who text me later being like, look, you have more people say it. Anyways, okay. Side conversation for everybody else to listen to there. Let me kind of tell a quick story, though. You were mentioning the note taker, where I feel like people are like, yeah, note taker, sure. But I watched a new advisor come onto an account, and it's great to have notes. But what if you don't read the past 20 years of notes? And that advisor thoughtfully went through the past 20 years of notes and found something that the client themselves had forgotten about. And it ended up, and they were so thrilled. And so I think AI is not taking anybody's job. There are lots of tasks, repetitive tasks that are not super high value, that are going to be eliminated. And kind of the thesis that you've made, Ranie, is that there's more time to focus on the client themselves. I think what we're really concerned about is, I think what you're going to see in big corporations, not like necessarily financial planning firms, but with this added capacity, do you just squeeze more productivity out of your people? We've made a real intention not to do that, really invest in people's career paths. maybe you could talk a little bit about that, just the sustainability of an advisor career. Because if you're going to hire someone like Plancorp and you're really buying into the process and the idea that the people are great, you would be nice to know that the people are still going to be there, even if they're in slightly different roles over time.
That's exactly right. And so an advisor burnout is very real. And I think we experienced it during 2020 and 21 more than ever before, because we were seeing, again, advisors are skewing younger and they've not lived through the same markets and the same level of pressure. This is a different generation that was equipped to deal with stress and pressure in different ways as well. So it is really important that we pay attention to those advisors and their burnout. We have always been very clear that capacity comes first. We are not trying to squeeze profit margin out of our people. We want everyone to have the capacity and the love and care for their job, that they want to go seek new clients, that they want to talk positively about what they do and be out in the world. And I'm a big fan of saying, don't bring your whole self to work. Bring your best self to work. And I think the more hours you can spend building those other, we talk about the rooms in your identity house, right? That you are not just a financial advisor, you are a parent and you are a sports fan and I am a reader and a bookworm. We have those other identities, and the more we are nurturing ourselves as human beings, the more our best self shows up at work, and it's the self who wants to be interfacing with clients, not the one who's drained from responding to emails until 11 o'clock last night and since 7 a.m. this morning. I remember us bringing in a speaker a few years ago that really just talked about having a gratitude journaling practice. And I think the best thing I saw come out of that speaker was at least 3 of the advisors on the team reached out to me and said, you know what, this changed my habit of picking up the phone first thing in the morning. It's my alarm. I shut off the alarm. I look at my Outlook. I stopped doing that. I put it down and I just thought of 3 things I was thankful for. And maybe they didn't write them down. Maybe they did. Maybe they built a whole practice, but just not looking at their phone first thing in the morning tells me that they're now taking a little bit better care of themselves. They're able to start up and their brain's not in 10 different places. We know that humans can't actually multitask. We just think that we can, and we do several things poorly at one time. What we want is people really focused on that client experience, being able to be proactive, not reacting to your email at the nth hour. So I think the better care advisors are taking of themselves, the better advisor they're going to be to that client at the end of the day. And it's our job as a firm to enable that and really model it and push it, right? I think all of our leaders, we made a decision years ago that we were not going to send messages outside of business hours. And we have stuck to that as a leadership team for years now. And that matters to our teammates. And so with AI, you're right. People are going to milk margins and people are going to say, I can serve 300 clients now because all I have to do is go into the meeting and then go into the next meeting. That works for a little while, but we know that humans can't have 300 relationships and sustain them really well. That's not the depth at which we want to know our clients. So we want to go deeper. That means we work harder to be whole humans who can go deeper with fewer people.
Ranie, if listeners are trying to evaluate their own advisor, or maybe they haven't hired advisors in the past, but they've interviewed and just decided not to go down that road, what can somebody do to tell the difference between a high quality advisor versus, let's just say, a warm body?
If you've not hired an advisor yet, I think it's maybe a little different in the questions you ask, and you certainly look for all of those same components, but you want it when you're talking to an advisor for the first time. A lot of times you're not talking to your day-to-day person. You're talking to the rainmaker, right? You're talking to the guy who's networking and shaking hands and out at all the events, and that's great. Are you going to serve me day to day? At Plancorp, often that answer is no, but we're going to say, nope, but this person right next to me is, because we're on the call together. So you want more than one person in that room really getting to know you. And then it comes down to, is this a person you want to spend time with? And more importantly, is this a person the non-financial partner in the relationship wants to spend time with? Because if you want to put off that meeting because you're like, God, their voice just rubs me the wrong way. Or, they always say something like, really talk down to me or really talk down to my wife, and it's so rude, and I'm just going to put that off for another month. those behaviors are going to show you that this isn't the right fit from a relationship standpoint. You want the relationship. You want them to care and know who your kids are. You want to have dinner with these people, right? Because you want to be excited to go see them. I wonder what we're going to talk about this time. I know I'm going to check some boxes off. I know I'm going to leave feeling smarter and more empowered with my money to make better decisions. That's what you're looking for. And if you don't have that feeling when you see your advisor's appointment on your calendar, if it feels like the dentist, then you need a new one. You need a relationship that you really look forward to engaging in.
Something you said earlier in the process, if it's like a smaller group and maybe there's 3 people or 5 people or maybe even 10 people, but they're all like servicing clients. My question is, who's doing the due diligence? Who's reading the tax law? And what those firms are often doing is offering a commoditized form of investing. People say all the time, investing is commoditized. And I'm like, there is a form that's commoditized. And in fact, we also offer that form of commoditized investing in case people really want it. But 95 to 98% of our clients do a form of investing. People who are listening to this podcast sort of know where I stand on investments. It's low cost. It's diversified. We're not trying to predict the future. But there is customization that deserves to be done for everybody. Like, are you going and buying a suit off the rack? Are you making sure it's at least tailored to you, if not custom suited to you? And so I think in general, I'm passionate. You kind of got me all heated on the investment side. I know our tax people and our estate planning people feel the same way. Our exit strategy people feel the same way. Our retirement plan people feel the same way. It kind of just goes back to the idea that, oh my gosh, and our recruiting people, like, how are you going to find the best players if you don't have experience recruiting lead advisors? I can't tell you how hard it is to find the people, but once you do, they're hard to convince to come. It's circling true. All the way back to this is why, we have sought to become the destination for the country's best advisors. I mean, it's way more difficult than I think people realize.
It is. And I think we've built a team to work together in that way so that the expertise comes through and passes through. I don't want any advisor to have to be the estate tax person and the income tax person and the insurance understanding person. I want them to be able to pick from other specialties. But I guess I think of it in the way that medicine has become so specialized. And I remember taking my daughter to the ENT and I said, okay, so I know somebody said she needs her tonsils out. What about this that's going on, in her lungs? Because we're concerned she might have asthma. And he literally said, you know what? Like, my job stops right here and the lungs are below right here, right? So he's doing the ears, the nose, the throat, and nothing else. And guess what? When all you have is a hammer, all you see is a nail, right? Like, let's get those tonsils out. Maybe she's breathing hard and has sleep apnea because she has asthma. We don't know. And so the way that medicine has specialized is the exact way we don't want to do this as an advisor. I don't want to have to go to one building for my investment person, another for my tax person, another for my estate planner. I want somebody to bring all of those things together under one umbrella and really explain to me the way the whole system functions, right? Because it is all interconnected. Just like my lungs are not separate from my throat and my ears, right? It is all one moving system. And so I think really looking at advisory firms who are bringing that all together, building specialties and niches, yes, but working as a collaborative team to bring the strength of that team to bear and allowing people to specialize, but also see the whole.
So I feel obliged to speak to some of the advisors who listen to the show, just for a second, at least. Maybe you could share like what it feels like, because you started, actually I did too. We both started our careers at Plancorp as advisors. Talking a little bit about what it feels like to work in a firm that's trying to be the destination for the best advisors, and maybe how an advisor can evaluate whether their firm is helping or hindering their own growth, and what type of people would thrive at Plancorp.
I love that question. And I think everybody has a culture fit, right? There are firms, there's the 2-3 person shop that everybody's trying to stretch the most income out of the fewest clients. And, we're all running a business. That makes total sense for some people. And
it's okay to be running a business and make some money, right?
It is absolutely okay.
It's allowed.
It is allowed. It is kind of the point, actually. And so I think what we are looking for at Plancorp is people who, I'm always surprised at how risk averse financial advisors are. So I'll just put that out on the table, that we are not generally big risk takers. And the big risk takers you see are the entrepreneurs who are really betting on themselves and running that one-man show for one-woman show for as long as they can until you need to scale, right? Those folks are great fits for us because they start to realize, hey, I got in this business to serve clients, and serving clients is now 50% of my time. And I hate that. That's an advisor who's going to walk into Plancorp and be like, oh, thank heavens, right? Somebody's doing my compliance for me. I don't have to worry about that anymore. All I got to do is go check these 3 boxes on the quarterly survey that I did all the compliance things, right? I don't have to run the payroll. I don't have to do the things. I think rainmakers love walking in here because I think often rainmakers are thinking, I can sell it, but who can serve it? And the more I sell, the more I'm going to be building a wait list because I can't get in there and spend the time with my clients. I really think solo shops with a rainmaker, those people are scared. They are waking up in the middle of the night thinking, what did I not do for an existing client, right? And they're more scared of the revenue that's going to walk out the door than they are of replacing it with a new client. New clients are easy. Retained clients are hard. You have to show up, provide that great service, and continually beat yourself every single year, right? You're competing against your best last self. And so I think those are advisors who fit really, really well with us, who can find a partnering in our technicians that we've really built up in the firm.
And I have to say, like, I feel like I introduce a lot of new clients here through the show. And one of the things that gives me a lot of confidence is the process and the people that I'm willing to put my name on this. You know, I know you're going to have a great experience. I'm happy to be in meetings. Now, I'm not on call the way that your advisor is. You know, they're able to, like, when you have something happen in life, you don't want to wait for somebody who only holds client meetings twice a year. You know, you want to meet right then. And so I always tell people, hey, I'll be in your meetings, but for the emergency ones, I might not be available. But those ones that you pre-plan, yeah, let's get it on the calendar. But I will tell you, as somebody who makes a lot of introductions through the podcast, I'm actually having one of those 2 periods a year where I personally am onboarding people where there's just so much confidence. Again, I know that we have the best players in the field, or the best actors on the stage, if we want to use the musical analogy instead of the sports one. But really is a powerful thing for people who are listening and interested in learning more. But let's focus and close on the investor. I guess maybe someone, especially if they've listened to us this far, maybe they've realized that they're not getting this type of advice. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who is going to choose a financial advisor for the first time or make a change, what would that advice be?
Yeah, I would say 2 things. They're going to put the fiduciary commitment in writing. It's part of the engagement agreement, right? And you want to meet the entire team, not just the rainmaker, right? So I think those 2 things are really a big deal. And then I would say, if there is no clear plan for your taxes, your estate, and your continuity of advisory services, keep looking. Keep looking. If you met with one guy and you really liked him and that was great, or you met with one gal and she said all the right things, but she wasn't willing to write down a fiduciary commitment, just walk away. There are more. There are more advisors.
Well, Ranie, I appreciate you sharing some time with me and the audience. If people want to follow along and watch what you have to say about this incredible industry and all the incredible people we work with, where can they find you?
So you can obviously find me on Plancorp's website. My bio is there. You can obviously find me on LinkedIn and all those standard places. I do blog my own kind of personal financial musings at girlmeetsmoney.com. That's my personal side project that I really love pouring into. And I speak at a lot of conferences, mostly for advisors in the industry. So if you see me out and about, please come say hello and introduce yourself. Tell me what you like to talk about. Ask me any question you'd like about Plancorp. I love to be an open book.
I appreciate that, Ranie. If you're watching us on YouTube or Cheddar, be sure to subscribe to the podcast or go to thelongterminvestor.com. I will link to everything Ranie just put out there. Everyone listening, watching, thanks so much, Ranie. I'll talk to you soon.